we are integrating with a lot of other financial protocols on eToro as well. Super excited to be here and to advocate for decentralized change.
Cool, Jasper, you want to go?
So I'm Jasper. I come from a traditional FX trading background and then joined eToro. As mentioned by ZZ, that we are actually very focused on social trading, multi-assets offering, including crypto. And we're probably the very first one launching BNB with fiat to BNB buying. So this is very interesting. We are also launching a centralized exchange very soon. So I think it's very relevant to this topic. And I also like being investing in the crypto market for a while. So I think I can bring some value to this panel.
Orlando?
This is Pablo. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I've been in the stock exchange market for many years. So I know a lot about regulations and institutions. But for the past years, we've been building out Eires-LatamEx, which is a platform that allows fiat to crypto, to onboard fiat to crypto in mostly all the countries in Latin America. And so here we are. Thank you, CC and Binance, for inviting us. And so we're going to share more about that.
Sure, it's a pleasure. So just to get the audience to know where we stand, I think in the middle to centralized exchanges, Lou is clearly decentralized. I'm kind of on the fence. We have, well, right now Binance.com is centralized crypto-to-crypto exchange. But we also have the Binance X coming up. So I'm kind of slightly, I think of myself neutral, but I think everyone thinks of themselves as neutral. But I'm definitely biased in some senses. So let me start off with a very misleading question, which is, what do you guys think? Which one is better? Right, so maybe a couple of minutes, name your arguments, why is decentralized good or bad, or etc. Go ahead. I guess we can go backwards. So Pablo, you want to start?
Sure. So which one is better? I think it's both are really good. It really depends on the user. I also think that there wouldn't be decentralized exchange if there hasn't been yet before centralized exchange. So it's like this one step to get to the next step. So it really depends on the users. So for example, for institutional type of traders, they might like more centralized, where they want to know who's the counterparty, what happens if something goes wrong. They want to know how it's being done the settlement and so on. On the other side, for the centralized exchanges, it's really about savvy traders that they want to hold their private keys. So it's really a matter of like who's the trader, and in that case you will know who's who. So it's not about which one is best, it's about which one is best for which type of user. And I believe that definitely both can coexist.
Sure. Jasper, you wanna?
I think I would take a personal point of view to answer this question because, as I said, I myself invest in ICO, in tokens, right? So basically, I open up maybe over 30 accounts in different exchange, including the centralized and decentralized one. Very honest, I actually prefer centralized as a trader myself because of the whole infrastructure is more ready. Like I love to look at chart, like charting is better in centralized exchange, and like listing token is faster. I personally have an account in Binance, so basically I think as a trader point of view, and not as a very tech guy, the crypto early adopter point of view, maybe centralized exchange is better at this stage. But for a lot of the crypto enthusiastic and those people who really like enter this market regularly, they might prefer decentralized exchange because of the ideology of decentralized, right? Because the whole idea at the very beginning is trying to remove the third party. So some of people they very insist that I want to use decentralized because it's more secure and it's without the third party. So I would say it's not like this one is better or that one. It depends on the segmentation of audience.
Sure, Lou, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean I do realize the importance of like centralized exchanges like Binance or Coinbase in terms of like getting new users and making it easy for people to get access to cryptocurrency. But at the same time, I think decentralized exchange is the future. Not only like providing the secure and safe environment for people to trade, but also we are building the infrastructure for the decentralized economy. A lot of people are building like decentralized funds management protocol, lending protocol, and many other financial applications. and they all need to get access to decentralized liquidity on decentralized chains. And that's one of the important tools that we are working at Kyber as well, to integrate with more financial protocol that are running on eToro and other blockchains.
So yeah, sure. Thanks for the views. I'll add a little bit myself, as we are actually doing a little bit of both. So this, in my mind, so I said that was a misleading question because one is never really better than the other. So let's point it out. It really depends on who the user is. So whether you are a more advanced user, if you have certain preferences, etc. So there's a few different factors to consider. There's liquidity, there's ease of use, and everything else. But I think there's three keys that I usually focus on. So it's security. So for any exchange, centralized or decentralized, security is really, really important. And there's ease of use. So it's got to be easy. Ease of use is kind of a broad term. Liquidity is kind of grouped in there because if you don't have liquidity, it's very hard to trade, or it's very expensive to trade. And then there's ease of use, right? So is the UI easy to use? Do I need to know how to install a hardware wallet? Do I need to know how to sign and stuff like that? So ease of use is really important. It's got to be like Apple kind of easy, right? So just click a button and it works. So from this aspect, from these three aspects, what are your opinions on how decentralized versus centralized works in these three aspects? Maybe we'll start from Pablo again.
Sure. I would say with regard to liquidity, that's why I always say that decentralized exchanges will work as long as there are other centralized exchanges, because you can get the pool of liquidity from the centralized exchange. They have to open the back door. But if that's the case, then liquidity will be solved. So we'll find, obviously, the current decentralized exchanges still need a lot of liquidity, but I can see 3, 5, 10 years from now, them having a lot of liquidity or connecting on the market to protocols. But definitely what I see the most important thing on your three things is the user experience. People are used to almost, in a centralized exchange, they feel this thing that they are actually on their email, and they have a username, a password. If something goes wrong, they might be able to connect with and talk to support, and they might be able to get their keys back, the passwords back. But in the user experience, as the decentralized exchanges are today, that's very complex. So until they don't get easy to use, then that's going to be the biggest point.
So you actually raised a very interesting point, which is security. Many people seem to think, well, especially in the crypto industry, many people seem to think that decentralized exchanges are more secure. Do you think that's true or not?
It depends. I would say
you should ask them.
Well, maybe you can jump in.
Sure, I would say centralized changes and decentralized changes achieve security in a different way, right? Like for centralized changes, everything is obscure and you have layers of protection. But for decentralized exchanges, most of them are super transparent, and they invite all the possible attacks before they actually launch, so that they remove all the potential vulnerability in the future when they launch. Yeah, so I mean, both of them, if they do their job well, both of them are secure, but actually in a different way.
Sure. Jasper, do you have anything to add? Or?
I actually want to more focus on the ease of use. You do mention a couple points that compare centralized exchange and decentralized, right? And it's very difficult for them to have it all, right? Secure, easy to use, a lot of function, right? But what I want to focus on is to use. I can take eToro as a very good example, right? So we actually not the very first batch of the company that the crypto community would think about at the very beginning, right? But we come in the second wave when people are not able to open account in Krakens. Remember 1.5 years ago, right? People are going crazy, open account in different exchanges, and they start to find it very difficult. And they come to us to find this is a very interesting platform with social function in there, and it's really easy to open account. Right? That's how people to start to get in touch with crypto. And what is very important, because when we talk about crypto industry, mass adoption is the key, right? So if this is not very easy for people to come in this market, there's no way that you can do client acquisition, thus you cannot have a really big community to support this crypto industry. So I think when we need to decide which to sacrifice, not security, maybe we need to focus also on the ease of use to really acquire more people to join the party.
Yeah, Jasper, you actually mentioned a very good point, which is something I actually want to talk about as well. Ease of use will be beneficial to the users, but from an operator point of view, whether you're operating a decentralized exchange or a centralized exchange, acquiring users, there's a marketing aspect to it. There's a difference between a centralized and a decentralized organization. A centralized organization has a lot of advantages when they do marketing. For example, it's quite easy for us to give rebates if you want to do a big campaign. Whereas if you're running a decentralized organization, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to do that. So do you guys, from a short-term success point of view, I'm going to talk about long-term a little bit later, short-term success point of view, is there any advantage to centralized versus decentralized models in your opinions?
Well, I think like for centralized, as you mentioned earlier, there are a lot of things that you can do that, like for a decentralized platform, that we cannot do. Right? For example, currently we can only support ERC20 tokens that run on Ethereum because it's just very hard to communicate between like Bitcoin and also Ethereum or any other blockchain, right? So that's why recently we also work with many other projects in the space to announce the draft BTC initiative to bring Bitcoin to Ethereum, so that other decentralized changes and also other applications can support Bitcoin on Ethereum. I would say, so that's one thing, and I think that initiative could like address the liquidity problem on decentralized changes.
I think my point of view is like, I think Loi mentioned, and you also mentioned in some of your interview, that decentralized exchange is the future, but we don't know how long it will be, right? So for the short term to medium term, I would say it's either a regulated centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange with a better infrastructure, right? So it's going to be these two routes for me, right? So for example, a lot of people scared about decentralized exchange because of security. Think about, if there's no regulations in place, a lot of exchanges being hacked. Some of them, they can easily might bring your money and just go away because there's no regulation there, right? And they don't have the technology like decentralized exchange to make sure the money is not with the exchange. So regulations, I think, is something that some of the people might not want to discuss, but I think it's very important right now, especially in this year, that will help the centralized exchange to bring the credibility, to also bring the institutional players in the crypto industry. Or if the decentralized exchange can improve in the user experience, the liquidity, and the speed, which is very difficult also because the current blockchain speed is also a problem. But with a very good structure in the decentralized exchange, I think it's a very good direction as well. So this is my two direction on this topic.
Sure, that's a very good point. Actually, that leads to a little bit of the question about regulation. Pablo, you run a stock exchange, so you're probably very heavily regulated from a regulation point of view. Do you want to comment about the regulation aspects of the different centralized versus decentralized exchanges?
So definitely. So I see that all centralized exchanges in every jurisdiction, almost of every country, are being regulated, or governments are being issuing different norms and laws to regulate the centralized exchanges. And I think that those sooner or later also going to get into the centralized exchanges, maybe a few years from now, but they will get there. What I still believe it's what as we all say, it's definitely the decentralized exchanges are the future. We don't know when yet. But if there's a moment of time that is a decentralized exchange regulated, that actually could also support KYCs and fiat, that would be a game changer. That's going to be revolutionary. It's just a matter of many years.
Sure. So, Louis, how does a decentralized exchange support KYC and do regulatory compliance, or is it necessary at all?
I think currently we see like different types of decentralized changes. Although all of them claim to be like decentralized change, but some of them operate like a non-custodial centralized exchange, right? So it's quite easy like to regulate all the trading activities over there. It uses regulate the people who offer the interface for the users to trade and to match all the transaction or the trade. But it's harder to regulate platforms that run entirely on smart contract, and even the interface is run on some decentralized network like PFS, right? It's going to be interesting to see how regulators are going to work with decentralized changes in the future.
Sure. So just to summarize a little bit, so there's what you mentioned there's a very interesting point, which is centralization and decentralization are not just two opposite points. There's a linear gradient somewhere in between. You can get very centralized or you can get very decentralized, but there's a lot of area in between where some parts of it is centralized, some parts of it decentralized. So there's a gradient scale. And different exchanges or different organizations, not just exchanges, even wallets, have different levels of decentralization or centralization, depending on whichever you want to call it. So in terms of security model, the two models are very different, right? So the more decentralized you are, the more you have to take care of your own security. But we get plenty of users who call us and say, hey, I just got hacked myself because my email's stolen, my phone, my 2FA stolen, etc. And then with centralized exchanges, the centralized exchange itself is a big hacker target, right? So you really want to rely on the exchange security, which we handle, which is a big part of our jobs, right? So it's a very different model. And in terms of the usability, I think today the centralized exchanges probably have a bit easier to use because people are just more used to emails, password sign in, and then be able to trade right away. And there's another question here. With regulation, I think the decentralized exchanges, how they comply to regulation still needs to be played out. So that's going to be quite interesting as well. There's a very important aspect of this is the fiat support, right? So can decentralized exchanges support fiat? Maybe you guys can take a crack at it.
I see that it's still a huge opportunity for all the centralized exchanges. There's a lot of money that's still yet in cash or fiat that hasn't come yet to the digital assets. So I think actually even before the centralized exchanges, take over, I think it's gonna for the next 3-4 years is a fiat to crypto. Onboarding that money coming to the decentralized exchanges. That's the hugest opportunity that we can see in next years.
So yeah, fiat definitely is something that is dominating in the centralized exchange, right? So because banking relationship is difficult, right? I'm sure you deal with a lot of troubles and problems there. So right now, I think the only gateway to really enter the crypto market is through centralized exchange with the fiat to crypto solution, right? I'm not sure how fast or how it's really able to do also fiat for the decentralized exchange, but one just brainstorm one way to do maybe is P2P crypto exchange that people can actually exchange fiat with crypto and then to merge into a decentralized exchange that will help the whole process decentralize, I would say.
Yeah, if you count fiat-like tokens, right, as fiat, then yes, decentralized exchange can support fiat. But if you really wanted to allow the user to send from their bank account to decentralized exchange, then it doesn't work because the moment you touch fiat, there's a centralization aspect over there.
Because think about this, right? Fiat is actually highly related to bank. The bank is a very highly centralized entity, so it's very difficult to decentralize.
Yeah, but I think we do see the model peer-to-peer, or the local Bitcoin or local Ethereum model in which people meet in real life and do the trade. Yeah.
So Louis, so from a decentralized exchange point of view, what do you think are your biggest obstacles to become bigger or grow faster, etc.?
I think the ease of use that everyone mentioned earlier is very important. We had a lot of problem, not really problem, but difficulty educating the users on they have to pay gas and they have to wait for 15 seconds in order to wait for the confirmation and things like that. And from time to time people forget their private key and I mean we also forget our password as well. So I would say like it's not only like the problem for decentralized chains, but also like for any decentralized applications and for blockchain in general.
So on that point, I'll do a little bit of advertising. So the Binance DEX will be really, really fast when it comes out. So 1 second confirmation times, and 1 confirmation is final. So we're hoping to solve that speed problem with the Binance chain. The testnet is due to come out in a couple of weeks, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but from also like so looking a little bit forward, I think we kind of all agree that we kind of have a feeling that decentralized exchange is the future, right? But when do we think that future is going to come, and what things do we need? What things needs to happen for that for that future to become a reality?
I think it's more fiat to come into crypto first, more fiat into decentralized, and then all that money is going to go to decentralized.
So basically, we need to get all the fiat from banks, centralized party into the centralized exchange first, and then go to the crypto, the decentralized exchanges. How about you, Jasper?
I think what Pablo was saying is not just because of fiat. It's again back to the mass adoption, right? The only gateway right now is like first to get people to buy crypto. I think the current problem with all the exchange, including us, right? The current problem is not the regulation bank in China or whatever, like other stuff. It's just because of the various project, right? So when the bull market come back, you know, like people start to really want to get into this market, the first gateway is fiat for those people who hold nothing. They don't have any crypto. So mass adoption is still, I think, very important. I don't know how long that will become like fully decentralized. Maybe it's not like fully decentralized. But you know, I think the healthy way to become more adoption on the decentralized exchange, I think Binance take a very good lead, like from a very mature centralized exchange point of view, and then they start to get into the decentralized area, so that we can bring, you know, the technology, you know, like we understand the user experience, right? Just one very interesting example that you mentioned, right? Some of the clients, some of the traders, they actually don't like to hold the private key and the assets themselves. They say like, I love to go to, you know, the centralized exchange, tell them I forgot my password, right? And then I can always use my password to retrieve my password, to renew my password, right? So this is the audience that we are looking at next. It's not just like the current audience sitting here that are very comfortable with the private key, already have a ledger. It's going to be potentially my parent, maybe my brother, my sister, right? If I want to educate them, like, okay, you need to buy a ledger, you have to remember this like 20 random keywords, it's just too difficult for them. So I think like coming from centralized exchange, knowing our clients, and bring all those good features, the infrastructure to a decentralized exchange, and waiting for also the blockchain to really advance to increase the transaction speed. And then, you know, the decentralized exchange will be coming to the reality, I would say.
Yeah, so I think it depends on a lot of factors, including like the fiat environment, regulation, and also like key management as well, which everyone is solving. I think like a couple of months ago, I talked to like some project that tried to solve the key management problem, and the way they try to solve it is very interesting. So the idea is like you can use your biometric information to generate and recover the key. I'm not sure like how exactly it works because, you know, I'm not into that field, but I think it's going to address, you know, the certain problem that everyone is facing.
Right. That's actually a very interesting topic on the key management. So again, I think for us, we offer both solutions. So now Binance.com, a lot of people use it as a wallet, kind of, it's a centralized service for withdrawals. But we also have Trust Wallet, which now is fully decentralized. Well, the development team is not fully decentralized, but they're spread all over the world. But with Trust Wallet, you manage your own private keys, and as a service provider, we don't touch any of that. So we offer both. We offer both options to our users. And also, again, another bit of advertising here. So Trust Wallet just did a major upgrade. So now we support Bitcoins in addition to Ethereum. We support Dash. We support like Tron, a bunch of other blockchains. So if you don't know about that yet, go take a look. If you want to hold your own private keys. So I want to
maybe you can also answer the question because you decided like last year to start a decentralized exchange, right? How long you think that will be coming to reality?
So I'm actually thinking that it will take a few years. So it's a short answer. I think it's a longer answer. I think there's, we all discussed, there's multiple factors in play here. I think on the decentralized side, you have the ease of use, speed. So those are things we can solve by technology or product involvement. I think with the Binance chain coming up, we're hoping to address some of those issues, so it will be really fast. And the user interface, the user experience will be similar to Binance.com. So if you guys seen the video, that's a real video of the demo. So when the product comes out, you'll basically work like that. So from a usability point of view, now the graphs look really good. The orders, when you press it, the orders show up right away on the screen. So we're hoping that we'll solve that. But there's a fundamental problem, as we said, that most of the liquidity, most of the money are still in fiat. So no matter how good the DEX is, if we don't have the money and liquidity on this side, and how fast the fiat moves in, again, is a function of how many fiat exchanges we have. So that's also why we're working very aggressively on the fiat on-ramps in multiple jurisdictions. But then again, there we don't control everything. So that depends a lot on the regulators, the banks, and or just the general education of people. So for me, I think it's going to take a couple of years at least. But I think we gotta start, or we gotta lead. We gotta start early. So that's kind of my opinion. I could be wrong, I could be right. But I never really make judgments. So I don't try to predict things. We lay the options on the table. We let the market decide. If suddenly tomorrow the market wants to all use DEX, that's great. Or hopefully we have a DEX by tomorrow. Or not quite yet, but very soon we'll have one. And if they all want to move into a wallet that stores their own private keys. We have one we have Trust Wallet now, and we're hoping to add more hardware support so that it makes it safer and easier to use on the decentralized side. So we're pursuing all of those options. I think we have about 5 or 6 more minutes. I just want to say, in 2019, again, what are your plans on the centralized and decentralized world in your respective areas?
On my end, I'm from Argentina, I come from Latin America, so definitely we've been working for the past 2 years on how to do the fiat on-ramp in most of our countries in the region. There are very few exchanges that support fiat to crypto, so this is our year to launch in multiple countries the fiat to crypto. So that's what we see happening. I also want to add that you just mentioned the wallet, the centralized exchange, and the decentralized exchange. I really believe that you cannot know how to run if you don't know how to walk. And so I think like years ago when I started into crypto, I really needed to understand how a wallet worked so that later I could get into a centralized exchange. And now I'm obviously more than ready to go and trade on a decentralized exchange. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's just a matter of years, but the most advanced people are just going to be keeping moving onto decentralized exchanges. It's really about now, the people who are like, it's a lot of cash, for example, in Latin America, they need first to open their wallets and they have to trade on a centralized exchange for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and later on, they're going to get into the centralized exchange.
So for eToro, we actually haven't, we think about like decentralized, in 2019 we are going to more focus on tokenizing asset actually. So we are rolling out our exchange very soon, which is going to be centralized. But we are taking our time because, as you mentioned, like security is one of the big items for all the exchange, right? So we're taking our time to make sure it is secure. But the big topic for us is going to be tokenizing asset. We are going to launch a lot more stablecoin and potentially add tokenizing asset, seeking for cooperation with Binance potentially. So yeah, like I think we come from a different background, right? We come from multi-assets, including the traditional cash equity, FX, ETF, etc. So we still have a lot to do with our exchange. And after learning a lot more, maybe we will start to look into also decentralized. And then maybe again, I don't think this is going to be one or another, right? So it's going to be coexist. So we'll see like how we do with the centralized and then to progress to the decentralized.
So for Kyber, there are a few things that we are going to focus on in 2019. One of that is wrap BTC and potentially wrap a few other coins as well. bring more liquidity to decentralized chains and other applications on Ethereum. And another one is to work with, to power the liquidity for most of the financial application on Ethereum as well, to really strengthen the decentralized economy that is growing strong on Ethereum. And of course, we are going to work with a lot of other projects in the space to educate the users, to introduce them to decentralized application and any changes.
So my last question would be, philosophically, are you guys bent or one way or another saying, look, it has to be decentralized or it has to be centralized? Doesn't matter at all. Because a lot of people in the community are philosophically married to one type or another. What are your opinions?
So can you repeat the question?
So philosophically, are you married to one type or another? You probably are. I'm not sure. So I just want to ask.
Well, I mean, decentralization matters, right? And I believe that everyone should, be using decentralized in this. But they should not, the knowledge requirement should not be too much for them to get to use decentralized changes.
To me, I think marriage is already stuck enough that you have to bond to one person. So technology-wise, I don't think we should say let's go for one direction for sure. Like what you said, just see what is going on. But again, we come from a centralized background. We understand our clients what they need, right? So I think the foundation is going to be start from the centralized. But I will not say centralized is going to be the ultimate solution for sure.
Yeah, I see what Jasper just said. I think we also talked about DCC earlier. Not everything can be decentralized. It could be a chaos. Everything was decentralized. So, but still, from a philosophical point of view, I'm more towards decentralized applications and decentralized exchanges. However, this is just starting. I can think about this for the next 10 to 20 or 30 years. When I think of all the institutional money and brokers, and there's so much going on centralized exchanges, it's way too early to think about decentralized.
Sure. Actually, yeah, we still have a couple seconds left, so I want to address one last point, which is on the decentralized world, right? How do you deal with security? You secure your own private keys. How do you deal with fraud, scammers, etc.? So what's the best way to address that? Because we already see a lot of that in the community, right? So what's the best way to, what are the ideas that you guys have to keep our community clean and safe?
I think the best way is just try to educate people and try to make sure that whatever you build is not hackable, and it's not there's no inherent security flaw for that.
I think the most effective way to really kill the scam is bearish market, right? So the bearish market actually kick out a lot of scammer. No profit here, but yeah, I agree. Education is very important.
Education for sure. For example, some exchanges have done very well. Earlier on, when margin trading started, people didn't know how to trade the margin, and that was very risky, And so education was very helpful, so that people understood and learned how to trade with margin. So definitely, education is important. But also for decentralized exchange, I would say, I love hardware wallets. And I think that everybody is gonna not only have one, but start using them way much more. So hardware wallets, I think also gonna take off very soon.
Sure. All right. There you go, guys. I think our time's up. So thank you very much for joining us and giving a round of applause. So I personally don't have any more panels in the afternoon, so I'll be outside mingling if anyone wants to talk to any of us. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.